Okay. So strap in. This is gonna be a long one. This is gonna be one of those ranty ones. But I'm gonna go over this because I think it's one of those kind of topics that fits the channel and it fits what people kind of feel at this time. But I'm gonna say this. I'm going to answer the question about why I believe someone who's been in entertainment, someone who's been around for a while, someone who's really loves movies in depth, loves film, loves, all this stuff intently. I grew up Mennonite, and I think that put me in the position where I didn't get to see movies, or I didn't get to see shows, or I didn't get to see stuff, I didn't get to play stuff. And as I got older, I saw it the same as like reading a book. I didn't separate, reading a book or art or any of these from movies or games or any of that. It wasn't a separate experience where, it's something to be like ashamed of or whatever. So I went down kind of a rabbit hole of, maybe, just like I used to play soccer. It's the same thing. I highly focused down, movies and games and all this stuff, and I actually did become a game developer, which is wild because you never know where life is going to take you. But I think I have some insight on, I've seen videos here and there talk about this topic, but I don't think that they've gone into the depth that they should have gone into, because there's multiple reasons. One of the reasons is, and I'm going to tell you this, some of the best directors in the entire world have answered this question. Kubrick and Kurosawa have both talked about the state of movies and the state of decline and what they saw for the future. And one of the things that I'd like to bring up here as my first point is that a lot of the times, they talk about originality. Okay, well, in the very beginning of film, there were no rules. People were just having fun. Okay? Most people didn't assume that they were going to make any money. Most people didn't assume that they were going to get famous. And I'm talking about the very beginning of film. Most people were just very curious and wanted to be in something and create something, and they were very genuine. Well, obviously, when you add the money aspect and you add control by any one group, you name it, then comes an aspect of, okay, now we have to set standards, we have to set procedures, we have to set policies. And so one of the things that I think is super important to look at is when Kubrick and Kurosawa were talking, one of the main things that gets highlighted is this. If you go to film school, okay, if you go seek a traditional degree, does this help you or does this hurt you? Because on some level, and this could be, movies are made up of a ton of talented people. So there's sound people, there's, art people, there's directors, there's actors, and everything has to be this big production that all works together in unison to actually create something worth watching, right? And I think the issue is, at its core, especially nowadays, there's a lot of people that default to certain ways of doing things. And the people that fall outside of that, we actually give more praise. And this has always been the case. The people who had less formal training, the people who didn't follow what everyone else was doing. I mean, you could just look at Kevin Smith. The people who didn't follow what everyone else was doing, the people who fell outside of that, you look at Sam Raimi, you look at Quentin Tarantino, you look at all of these people who fall so far outside of what you're supposed to do, the Michael Bays of the world, what you're supposed to do. And while those people do make a lot of money, it's because they're playing by the rules, right? People like Michael Bay, is not the same as Quentin Tarantino, right? Both make money, but in different, very different ways. One makes money because he is willing to play ball and is willing to grind out something and do it by the book. And then one makes money because they're different and they have different ideas of how to express these things and what's good. And I think if you look at a lot of the oddball kind of people, and this can go through everybody. I think, in my opinion, the oddball people are always upsetting the industry, changing the industry, finding new ways to do things, and they're more innovative. That does not mean they're always successful. And being different for the sake of being different is not the same as being obsessive. Like when you really look into these directors that I'm talking about, we're talking about obsession. We're talking about something that grips you every single night, that when you lay down at night, it's hard to, even function normally, because you're dreaming of like new things, and stuff is coming to you while you're asleep, and you can't really get any sleep because you just want to get up and work. And it's an obsession and it's a passion and it takes you over. Some have referred to that as like the muse state. Personally, I just think it's mental illness, and they found a way to channel that into, and when I say mental illness, I just mean, I think everyone has some degree of mental illness that we're coping with at any one time. It just depends on how debilitated you are by it. I think at some level, everyone has something that they're going through, or something they've never got over. But when I say that, don't think I mean full blown, rocking back and forth and talking to yourself. I just mean that a lot of these really great individuals were also very disturbed individuals, and it also made them, a lot of them, assholes. And why are they assholes? Well, they've been literally pushed down their entire life and told, you'll never amount to anything. Everything that you're doing is against the rules. You just need to fucking stay in your lane and just give up on this dream. You really just need to find a job. You really just need to give up. Like, this isn't for you. And, that does something to a person. And sometimes what it does to a person is it makes them want to prove other people wrong. And so in society now, though, the conformity issue is, if you go, is a good director, is a good actor made by going and seeking out like these schools, I say film school, any kind of schooling. Well, it can give you a foundation, right? It can give you a foundation, but it's like, more or less nowadays, it would be easier to do it on your own. But back then, a long time ago, it was like the cool kids club. Like, you needed to, at some point, get a degree to say that I have a degree, for people to trust you, and also to trust you with these big budgets. And a lot of those people, just like Kevin Smith did, they said, look, I don't have money. I don't want to do the school thing. I just want to make movies because I love movies, and I'm just going to figure out how to do that. And when you look at these really great people that everyone worships, no matter how they act in real life, because that's the problem, right? You build this big image of someone up, and that doesn't necessarily translate to, they're a good person in real life. You got to understand, these people were not treated very well for a very long time. And that once they made people a little bit of money, suddenly they were worshipped. And it leaves kind of a bad taste in your mouth, because it's like, oh, well, I could have done this the whole time. I was telling everyone that I wanted to do this. I could do this. And they figured out how to do it. But now people want to cash in and give them a ton of money because they think they're going to make a ton of money. Well, I think that's sort of the weird part about this, right? So the schooling aspect of it comes into play. That's point one. That's what I really want to drive home here. I just want to drive home the aspect of, you know, who these people are, you know, and not to say that none of them went to school. Don't think that I'm saying that, but when you really look, I mean, even at Wes Anderson, how he's developed this crazy, passionate view of what he sees movies as, he is absolutely worshipped. That man can't make something that fails anymore. It's just impossible. I mean, it feels like if he has his name on it, it's going to do a certain amount of money, and that's obvious. But to say, you know, he's completely all there, or, you know, like he was only good because he had very good foundation and good skill and good schooling, it's like you just don't see that often, that the schooling is what just makes them. Now, you could be a good learner, you know, and I do think that I'm being a little silly here because I'm not taking into account that there were, you know, like Steven Spielberg, and there's also a lot of straight laced directors that do very well. Um, but I just kind of feel like when we look at the industry as a whole, a lot of people are trying to be the straight laced guy, and they want to go to the school, they want to get told that they're good, and they want to get told that, you know, oh, you did exactly what you're supposed to, and they want the pats on the head. And we have a society that kind of ranks you based on, you know, what you've done and what you will do, and the idea of, you know, if you've done schooling but you've never made a film before, at least you've done the schooling, right? If you have no schooling and you've never made a film, it's like we rank that at different things. But I do think that there are these outliers that really come into play. And with that being said, I want to talk about writers. This is my second point. Writing in movies is so critical. Okay, writing in movies is one of the most critical parts, and it's being actually just fucked around with, if I'm honest. I think writers are some of the worst people in today's society as far as crafting a narrative, crafting something that you can really think about. You know, while you're writing, I'm the audience. What am I painting for them? What's the canvas look like that audience is looking like? What are they looking at? And really painting that picture in super high detail, not leaving loose ends, not forgetting about characters. You know, Game of Thrones was a fucking mess at the end because of the writing. And I think you can't say it's the costumes. You can't say it's the fucking actors. You can't say, you know, it's the story. The story was absolutely goat fucked. And that's one of the things that I think right now is a big issue. Writing a long time ago was more accessible, I would say. Writing, even, you know, it was so more accessible than a lot of these other things. Like if you wanted to become an actor, that was like a 1% chance. But if you wanted to become a writer, you know, you really did have more opportunity. And you're like, even people who thought they couldn't do it, it's like, oh, well, I'm a woman, that won't ever happen. Okay, well, they disguised themselves, you know, writing as a man, and they sold books. I think that is kind of the same way that should be built up in people's heads, is the writers have had a disproportionate ability to be successful. But nowadays, as we go forward, and there used to be different tiers of writer. So, like, if you wanted to get into the industry, maybe you write a commercial, maybe you have a book, maybe you have a novel, maybe you have something. There's different creative ways to get into that industry. But nowadays, I do feel like we have a lot of people who went to eighth grade English, and they said, I'm going to be a famous writer. And what they did with that is just absolutely produce some of the worst hunks of shit that have ever been written, ever. And the reality is a lot of these guys are getting paid a decent amount of money to do not that much. We see it with, I mean, the main thing that you see with like today's movies is like the ending. Dude, the endings are so bad because that is one of the really hard tests as a writer, is to satisfyingly end a film, a book, whatever. You want to end it with a very hyper focus on resolution and closing and stuff like that. But today's movies are about franchises. If you end a movie with a satisfying ending, how can we possibly keep it going? Now, some movies are able to do it because they had decent writers. I think James Gunn always puts together a really decent team. I think that there are good writers in the industry, don't get me wrong, but it's like when you look at something like Interstellar, for instance, the writing is absolutely impeccable. And then from there, the teams took that and made the visuals, and the actors sold it, and the music. I mean, you can't even, I mean, the music carries the whole fucking film. You can't name a stage in that process. You know, there could be those naysayers who go, oh, well, it wasn't scientifically accurate. Fine. It's a fucking movie, right? So movies that can get you to suspend your disbeliefs are the best kind of movies. The ones that make you forget, like, dude, like, just enjoy yourself. And I think Interstellar is one of those good pieces that does that, and it has good writing, and it really hammers home those points. But I'll tell you something about Marvel movies. One of the main reasons that Marvel movies are so fucking bad is they don't even finish the scripts anymore. They know what they're doing when they get to set, and they'll have last minute rewrites. And you look at these TV shows and you look at the movies and you just say, Jesus fucking Christ, what were they doing? You'll have a bunch of plot points that are just out of order. You'll have a bunch of loopholes in the stuff. You're like, why couldn't they just take the boat? It's like it's never ending. It's actually just never ending how bad they get this. And let's talk about passion. Passion in the industry. Do you think that all of these people that are attaching their names to something like really care whether it's done or whether they get to work tomorrow? Like, the reality is sometimes they're told, like, we need it done in a week, and they'll get it done in a week, but they know it's not their best work. Everyone knows it's not their best work. The consensus should be they need enough time to do their best work, but if their best work given infinite time is not up to snuff, you should fire that writer and hire someone who gives a shit about what they're writing. Especially, I want you guys to really think about this, and I want you to look at this critically. When you look at movies, okay, movies are so unbelievably, unreasonably hard to do right now. Whereas if you look at animated stuff, they're easier to do. And what do I mean by this? The production and the oversight on something like a Marvel animated movie is so much less than a $200 million big thing that has to succeed. Everyone has to succeed. Everyone wants their moment in the sun. Everyone wants to be praised. Like, oh, look at me, I'm the main actor. Like, everyone wants that. In an animated movie, you have voice actors. Sometimes, even people like Ron Perlman insist on doing the voice of Hellboy, even in the animated stuff, where typically it would just go to a voice actor. And when you see about that is you're talking about someone who like gives a shit about the movie, and even talking about, speaking of Hellboy, Guillermo del Toro, that is just another instance of someone that's a little outside the norm, that, you know, no one really ever expected to do good things, and they're able to do it. But these movies, when you look at the writing in these big movies, they're just fucking horrendous. There's all these writer strikes. There's all these writers saying, "You can't replace me. I'm striking because I need to get paid more." It's like, okay, well, currently you do nothing, and now you're really doing nothing. It's like, replace them. I think writing is one of the key things everything balances on. If you don't have a good story, don't make the fucking movie. And you know what's funny? It's like, we talk about comic books, and we talk about, especially, look at all the source material that they have. Those comic books are literal gold, written by people who not only care about the material, they care about the consistency, and they care about, you know, these people would work at these places for 40 plus years and never change their job and take pay cuts just because they wanted to be where they were. And you might think that that's silly, and that's fine. But when you care about something so deeply that you're willing to take a pay cut to stay, or to not have someone else be fired, and to pull through a hard time, you know that that person truly does give a shit. I mean, I do think back to the idea of that when Disney got rid of its hand-drawn department, how crazy that must have been to get rid of the people who have dedicated their whole lives to this thing, and making it the best they can. And I kind of wanted to frame what I'm saying in a way that makes sense to people who don't know anything about what I'm talking about. Is, you know, you have these guys who really have sacrificed everything. They're kind of weird. They're kind of odd. But when you look at those people specifically and then just getting rid of them, that is the most wild thing. And yeah, they didn't get rid of all of them. Some of them transitioned, you know, into different roles and things like that. But I think that's part of a problem too. Do good writers and bad writers have the same opportunities? And if they do, I think that that is, you know, and who judges what is good writing and what is bad writing? Do faster writers get more jobs? And you could also say, yeah, but does fast writing mean good writing? You know, and I talked about Game of Thrones earlier, and that's one of the things. And even the source material on that is terrible. Frequently, this George Martin, he forgets the color of the hair of his characters, what they're wearing, where they are, plot points that you can't forget. Not in a series like that. You need to have this posted on your wall and look at it every day and memorize it and don't take any breaks. You need to power through. You need to have sticky notes, and you need to move these down a timeline about where they are, when they are, what they're wearing, what they look like. Oh, he had a scar. He now has a scar on his face because, you know, and it should be a system where you consistently update that system and move toward that goal. So my point is, writing in today's world just is the most egregious, terrible thing. And to prove this, I need you guys to understand, every single time that you see a movie that's made off of a book, it's because they can't rely on writers to write something worth putting on screen. So they have to go and say, hey, guy that sold 100,000 copies of this book and everyone loves, I need a movie. And since you love this thing and you put it together and it's so good and everyone loves it, I am going to take that and sell that instead. Because putting our own stuff out there is too fucking risky. Why is it too risky? Well, they have bad management. That's another big key point. Bad management, people who care about the dollar way too much, sanitizing everything in a movie to create the largest possible audience. You know, people say, and this is an industry thing, oh, if we make it an R movie, only certain people can see it. It's like, but does that mean you're not going to make money? But it's like, but we can make more. And so they'll sanitize the material, they'll tone it down, they'll add stuff they wouldn't have added, they'll tone down the emotional aspect, the gore, the whatever would sell the movie more might have been those things. And I get what people are saying, you know, they're in it to make money, and that's true. But again, when you look at these directors that have stayed outside that kind of box mentality, did they not make money? You know, did they not make money? And there's winners and losers. So if the argument is, well, how do you pick the winners and losers? Because there's winners and losers that stay straight-laced or they stay out of the box. You know, that, you know, when you look at someone like Tim Burton honestly should have lost. He should have lost. There was a lot of stuff stacked against him. And what he did is said, instead of relying just on myself, I'm going to rely on people that I care about, and we're all going to work together to achieve something. And they did. They worked together on essentially achieving all of their careers together. When we talk about Johnny Depp, when we talk about that Helena Carter, and, you know, in that role, he was a manager, and he was a good manager. He was somebody who had a vision. It was a really weird-ass vision. I'm sure that the studios were probably shitting their pants, worried about, you know, what is this going to turn out? And it did turn out. And that is another thing that management fucks up, is they have this risk assessment that they make. And I think that risk assessment is off lately, because the issue is, why would I give you $1 million to make a movie that makes 20 million? Now you would think, well, 20 million is still a lot of money. Yeah. And $1 million is not that much to make a movie. And yeah, it surely is. But their wacko risk assessment says that they need to put up 200 million and try to make $1 billion. And if they fail, they'll almost bankrupt their fucking company. But if they succeed, because they think they can just keep throwing money at it, that it's not a talent problem or an actor problem or a story problem or a visual problem. You know, you look at Sky Captain and the World of Tomorrow, visually, I think he killed it. A little bit. Didn't work as good as they thought. An entirely CG movie, and, you know, moving into the era where people are sick of CG. And, you know, obviously it has other issues, but I think when you really look at it, these people in management have a very poor meter. Okay. I think what's happening more or less is that there's a lot of rich people who don't know why they're rich, and they think anything that they put in money to should always give them money back. And that anyone who says that, oh, this isn't good, it's wrong. And they're right, because they're rich and they know better. And put the money in and nothing will come back. And then they'll complain about it and they'll blame the studio or the audience or whatever. And the risk assessment is way off. Way off. Now, there are more or less a lot of first-time directors getting a big chance now, but it's the same in the video game industry if you think about it. The video game industry keeps betting big and losing big. But indie developers will spend 2 years making some cube move across the screen, and people will absolutely shit themselves to play it. And they'll sell it for a reasonable price, too. and they'll make a ton of money. And I think that it's all coming back to, I think that we're going to start seeing more films, especially on like Netflix. And I'll tell you a company that's doing it really well right now is A24 is hiring people who have barely made anything because they're betting really big and heavy on the fact that these guys care enough about what they're doing and are just weird enough and just outside the box enough that if they give them $1 million, right, and that produces 20, that's way better. That's way better than any of this crap that Marvel's doing or big AAA studios are doing with these video games where they're betting so big that they can't possibly, even if everyone was to go see it, they cannot fucking possibly make their money back. And they don't seem to understand that. So I think management is also a key reason why movies are just completely failing. Now, I know at this point, I've been talking for 30 minutes, and if you're still here, that's very impressive. I thank you a lot. I think it means a lot to me that you're still here watching this, okay? But I want people to see that I really do care about film. And so when you look at my other videos, sometimes I really don't go that in depth. I think sometimes it's just, hey, I want you to know about something. I think you should watch it, or I think you shouldn't. And that's all there is to it, right? It's not a big deal. But I will say this, I do care a lot about film. So I don't say this stuff lightly, but I am passionate about it. And that's why it might seem like I'm being a bit of an asshole. Because I do find myself sitting there going like, man, at some rate, do I think I can do better? I don't think so. I would, in order for me to make a movie, right? So I don't want people to think I'm egotistical, because it's very easy to just be a critic, right? I don't think that I can make a movie unless I filled all of those roles to make sure that it could be done. But in doing that, I don't think the movie would ever get done, right? Because you actually do need to build a solid team, put people in that you trust, and have like good people to back you up. Movies cannot be made almost solo. You got to have somebody there. You got to have somebody that cares about what you are doing just as much as you, if not just a little bit less, if you're doing it in that way. Now, I will bring this up, and this is going to be, one of those trigger warnings all the kids are talking about. I do think that there is an element of, I guess what they would call woke, right? Because, listen, I'm going to have to use the word. People hate me using the word. I totally understand that. There is no other word to use, okay? If there was another word to use that wouldn't piss people off so much, I would use it. But the idea behind it, I do think is infecting a lot of TV. And I think the people who are not admitting that are very dishonest, because the excuses that we make and the excuses that we tell people, and we say, it's very disingenuous, right? It's, on one hand, we're saying that, hey, we're going to do this thing and we know people won't like it, but we're going to do it anyway because we're good people. And then when an audience says, hey, we're not dumb, we know why you did that, they go, oh, us? We didn't mean that. We were just doing this. And then secretly behind closed doors, they go, actually, we did mean this. We are doing this on purpose. A lot of these people that do these movies lately are so, like, it's the level of egotism that they think that they are the best. I don't know how these people grew up, okay? I don't know if they were born into families that just told them that they were the best at all times, or because they honestly believe it. They honestly think that they can do no wrong. You know, that Rachel Zegler girl is just an absolute stunning example of what I'm talking about. And just so we're clear, you know, egotism does not mean just actors. We're talking about the writers can be like that, the directors can be like that. Um, you know, a lot of people, who was it? Edward Norton. A lot of people stopped working with him because they had a lot of problems on set, right? And, you know, and it's sad because he's an amazing actor. But once you start rewriting scripts and telling the director how to do his job and doing all this stuff, you have, you know, you obviously have that egotism problem. I think at some rate, we have to address the elephant in the room, which is like, we're letting these 20-year-old directors believe that they're gods, and they're given a lot of money, and they're told that for whatever reason that they can do no wrong, and they're just like loose cannons out there. And it's not just 20-year-old directors, but I am saying it seems to be like a new gen thing. And as more old directors leave, and as more old writers leave, and new people come in, I think we do see that decay. Now, things change, okay? I'm sure that if you went to somebody back in the day and all they had in, like, say 1950s or whatever, all they had is black and white movies, and you showed them a movie that we have nowadays, they would probably think it's the worst fucking thing they've ever seen, you know, depending on what movie you give them. But you know what I'm saying? Things change over time. We don't find the same things impressive that we once did. You know, they took a lot of the Agatha Christie novels and they've remade them, and that kind of proves that some dated things don't feel like they work anymore because it's not as impressive. Like, it's almost like, oh, well, I've seen this before. Or, oh, well, I knew it was going to happen, because it's just so, you know, it's like, oh, well, it's like that's been done. So I do think that there's also in the industry a problem of innovation. What do we do next? And will they even be allowed to do that, because they're not allowed to take risks, but they're also, on the same coin, allowed to take insane risks with other people's money. But that's what I'm saying. It's like with the woke stuff, it does feel like if you're selling something and you're putting a little bit of poison in it, and then someone eats it and they get sick and they say, hey, you made me sick, and then you go, no, I didn't, but you brag about it online about how sick you made everybody. I think we're at a time period in which we need like some self-reflection and just saying, okay, well, you care about yourself more than you care about the movie. You care about yourself more than you care about, you know, this actor's career that you just destroyed, because they were in your movie and they are fucked, you know, because I don't think all these actors share the same opinions. I don't think it's every single one of them. I think, honestly, we're getting to a point where maybe it's like 60-40. But there's a lot of actors who don't care about this shit, or they at least stay middle ground. And that's like myself. I stay very middle ground because I do think, on some level, I don't mind if you put a gay character in something, and I don't mind if you put an actually gay character, or a gay actor in a gay character's role. Because I'm sorry, but if anyone wants to come at me in the comments about this, I'm going to tell you, Dallas Buyers Club was a good movie. And I don't give a fuck what any of you people say about that. Dallas Buyers Club was a deeply well-written, emotional movie. Did it have gay stuff? Absolutely. Would I consider that woke? No. Oh my God. It did not try to paint any kind of picture that wasn't true. It didn't try to piss people off on purpose. And it didn't try to paint some picture that was untrue just to piss people off that knew what they were doing. Because the problem is, like, the young people don't really know the history, right? And so if I were to make a movie and I were to fuck with stuff that only you knew was wrong, you're getting pissed about it, and then people wonder, why are you pissed about it? And that's the ultimate thing with that pisses me off, is when you do have an emotional reaction to something that you love being destroyed, you're angry. You want to talk about it. But then being told that you're stupid for feeling that way is the same thing that got some of these directors where they are. Where it's like, oh, you're stupid for caring about that. It's like, well, this is my passion. I like this. I like, it's like Star Trek. I like Star Trek. I like Stargate. I like this. And at some point in your life, if you like those things, you were bullied. You were told that it's stupid to like things like that. And I think that kind of aspect is what we have now. It's just straight up bullying. It's just straight up trying to make you feel small, insignificant for caring about something as trivial as a movie or a book or whatever. But the reality is, especially here on this channel, is you're not fucking stupid. You should care about that stuff. And quite honestly, you're the reason that writers write. You're the reason that people make movies. You are the type of person that they envision falling in love with what they made when they wrote it. That's the fact. Now, I'm not saying that's true in 100% of cases, but I will say, in my opinion, and especially on this channel, absolutely. No one should feel stupid about liking something. Now, I can call a movie terrible, and I can objectively say why it's terrible, but if you still love that thing, that has value, and that matters. That absolutely matters. So don't you ever sit there and think in your head that you're stupid for liking something, okay? Or having a passion, for Christ's sakes. Or, just liking a certain universe. I mean, dear God, there's a lot of people nowadays, especially in the young crowd, if it was filmed anytime after 2000, they just won't watch it. They can't. There's something in their brains that won't let them watch it. And that's crazy to me, because there's so many amazingly well-written films and movies and books and stuff, and there's a whole generation that actively rejects it because it's too far out, and I just think that that's silly. And even me, you would say, oh, well, it's not like you're out here watching black and white movies. I absolutely am. Seven Samurai is probably one of my favorites. I think it's a classic, and I think everyone should see it. And it's actually free to watch on YouTube. But, and we can go on and on. We can talk about Cyrano de Bergerac. We can talk about whatever we want. Talk about whatever we want. I think at some level, though, even the black and white House on Haunted Hill. We can talk about the horror classics, Bela Lugosi. You watch those now, and yeah, they are silly, but you can see the passion behind them. You can see what made people love them at the time. You could appreciate them for what they are, but understand that we've moved past that. I just want to get that clear before we go any further. Now, again, this is a long video. If you're here, go ahead and subscribe, because YouTube is absolutely gonna bombard the shit out of you with my ugly face, and I am sorry about that. That is kind of what happens when you watch a video this long. Now, I think one of the last things that I'll point out in movies nowadays is a significant lack of passion. And I think we can all agree on that. Just a significant lack of, am I doing this for money and fame, or am I doing this because I really believe in what I'm doing, I love what I'm doing, and I wouldn't do anything else even if I was paid nothing. Significant lack of passion. I mean, it's everywhere. It's everywhere. It is everywhere, and it's so hard. it is so hard for me to accept and see how open everyone is about it. I'm going to tell you this. Transformers came out, and when Shia LaBeouf and Megan Fox made their tour and doing the interviews, and they actively told people to just not even see the fucking movie, they didn't give a shit about Transformers, and they got replaced. That was one of the most satisfying times in film history for me, where I think about how unappreciative and how egotistical that moment was for them. And anything that happens after that, and listen, you might like those people. Congratulations. Megan Fox went on to absolutely get typecasted as are you fuckable? Okay, you got the role. People would fuck you. Here's the role. That's what kind of person she played after that. Now, not even going into the fact that that's who she was playing in that movie, but the reality is, like, what are you going to do? What are you going to do when, if you had a big opportunity like that and you took a fat shit on it and you told people not to see your movie and you told people that it was bad and you told people, like, crazy to me. So when I'm talking about a significant lack of passion, it's almost like a significant lack of empathy for everyone on the crew, even the sound guy who needs the fucking movie to do well. People want to get hired again. People don't want the single linchpin to be some egotistical fucking actor who destroys it for everybody. Would people have gone to see the shitty Snow White if Rachel Zegler wasn't in the forefront? I think that they would have. I think that they would have, for the same reason that they went and saw Lilo and Stitch. Lilo and Stitch is not true to the original, like, at all. In fact, it has significant changes. But everyone went and saw it because they felt like, and they agreed, that while it is not the original, and they still rated it, what, 90, it's like 90% on, like, Rotten Tomatoes and stuff. While it is not the original, they still cared enough to put effort, to put, not in the aliens, Jesus Christ, let me tell you that. Those aliens looked bad. And they could have got the guy who did the Pleakley part of it. He used to be on Kids in the Hall. Look that up. Have fun. But I will say this. The passion was there. Even though it was a remake, even though it did bad. I mean, think of all the things that they did wrong. And it's still, and honestly, and I'm going to say this, I'm a grown man and I'm talking about a child, but the girl that they got to do Lilo was adorable. She did a fantastic job. And I just think that that's the passion. Something that should have failed, didn't. And, Snow White, I think more people would have be convinced to go see it if Rachel Zegler never did any of that dumb shit. The egotistical, dumb shit, thinking that she's everything. And honestly, I don't know why anyone would hire her after that, except for, to get an easy bait, to get easy publicity for their movie. But lack of passion, again, I think we see it. It's epidemic levels of. It's literally epidemic levels of unpassionate people who, their whole thing is, oh, I want to die. I don't want to live. They're apathetic, right? They're not, this is not something that is going away. It's only getting worse. They don't see any point to anything. If you like something, you need to be bullied for it. The whole culture is rotten around that. And I think passion for something, that you care about is necessary for art. Okay. I don't know how to tell you how many video games uh, reviews I've done where the only thing I can think about while I'm trying to record is like, they just didn't give a shit. They clearly didn't give a shit. Everyone came to work and everyone sold that whole fucking, they didn't do anything. They came in, they clocked in, they did their job, they went home. And it shows. Okay? A lot of these games, a lot of these movies, a lot of these books, it shows. So, I think, honestly, where I'm at with all of it is, if you like this video, fantastic. Give me a sub, throw me a comment. I comment on every comment. I always reply. So if you have critique or you want to say something, that's totally fine. If if you want to see more, subscribe. I've got other things coming. And hey, thank you for watching. You've been amazing. See you in the next one.